Check in. Unlock your nightmare. At this hotel, every room has a key, but no one ever checks out. The reflection that watches back. My name is Lena, and I make a living selling beauty. I'm a photographer. Ghost towns, abandoned asylums, derelict mansions. I find the places time forgot, and I make them beautiful again. It was this morbid aesthetic that led me to the old Grandview Hotel on October 30th. I'd booked room 712 for a Halloween-themed portfolio shoot. The online reviews were a treasure trove of Gothic potential. Ornate, eerie, stunning original features. One comment, buried deep, simply read, "The mirror in 712 watches you." I'd laughed, saved it as a potential caption, and packed my bags. The Grandview didn't disappoint. It was a mausoleum of faded grandeur, smelling of dust, old wood, and a faint sweet perfume that had soured with age. The clerk at the front desk was a gaunt man with hollow eyes who handed me the heavy brass key to 712 without a word, his fingers brushing mine. They were ice cold. Room 712 was at the end of a long, silent corridor. The air grew colder with every step. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, and my breath caught. It was perfect. A four-poster bed with a tattered velvet canopy, dark mahogany furniture, and a thick layer of dust motes dancing in the slanted afternoon light. But the centerpiece, the true masterpiece, was the mirror. It was a floor-to-ceiling leviathan of tarnished silver and intricately carved black wood, depicting twisted vines and weeping angels. My own reflection looked back at me, pale and wide-eyed from the long drive. I felt a sudden, irrational urge to cover it with a sheet, but I shook it off. This was exactly the atmosphere I needed. I spent the evening setting up my props. I draped fake cobwebs over the bedposts, arranged a collection of jack-o'-lanterns with flickering LED candles on the dresser, and set up my camera on a tripod facing the mirror. I wanted to capture the perfect shot, me in a dark lace dress surrounded by the macabre decor, with the ancient mirror doubling the scene. It was as I was adjusting a plastic bat that I first noticed it. I waved my hand, testing the light. In the mirror, my reflection's hand waved a half-second later. I froze, my heart giving a single hard thump. I blinked, shook my head, and put it down to exhaustion in the tricky low light. I turned to pick up my camera, and in my peripheral vision, I saw the reflection turn a fraction after I had. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. This wasn't my imagination. Tentatively, I raised my left hand. The reflection in the mirror raised its right, a perfect mirror image. I let out a shaky breath. Then I smiled, a slow, forced smile. The reflection's smile was slower, wider, and it didn't reach its eyes. Its eyes were hungry. Panic, cold and sharp, shot through me. I took a step back from the mirror. The reflection stood its ground for a terrifying moment before Tayatwe Hola Ipu, its movement a clumsy echo. The delay was growing. I could hear the blood pounding in my ears, a frantic drumbeat against the oppressive silence of the room. The scent of soured perfume was suddenly overwhelming, mixed with a new metallic tang like old coins. I stumbled towards the door, fumbling for the brass knob. It was locked. I rattled it, pulled with all my strength, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped. I spun around, pressing my back against the cold wood, my eyes glued to the mirror. My reflection was no longer mimicking me. It was just standing there, head slightly tilted, observing me with a calm, predatory interest. The room grew colder, so cold I could see my own panicked breaths pluming in the air. The LED candles in the jack-o'-lanterns flickered and died, one by one, plunging the room into deep shadow, illuminated only by the pale moonlight filtering through the window. And then the grandfather clock in the hotel lobby began to chime midnight. Bong. Bong. With each resonant chime, the reflection began to change. Its face, my face, smoothed out. The fear replaced by a placid, alien serenity. Its eyes darkened into bottomless pits. Bong. Bong. It smiled. It wasn't my smile. It was a grotesque, stretching thing full of malice and a terrible, ancient knowledge. The final chime hung in the air, vibrating through the floorboards. The reflection slowly raised its right hand, the hand that corresponded to my left, and pressed its palm flat against the inside of the glass. A sound like cracking ice filled the room. The surface of the mirror rippled, distorting the image behind it, swirling like dark water. The solid glass became a liquid, silver-black pool, and then a hand emerged. It was a perfect replica of my own hand, but made of something cold and solid and glassy. It moved through the mirror's surface as if it were pushing through a film of oil. The air it brought with it was the cold of a deep, lightless grave. I tried to scream, but the sound was trapped in my frozen throat. I could only watch, paralyzed, as the arm followed, then a shoulder. The thing was pulling itself into my world. I found my voice then, a raw, tearing shriek that echoed terribly in the small room. I threw myself against the door again, my fists beating against the unyielding wood until they were bruised and bloody. I glanced back and the horror had fully emerged from the mirror. It was me, a perfect, glassy doppelganger standing on my Persian rug, its feet not quite touching the floor. It took a step towards me, its movement silent and unnaturally smooth. I scrambled backwards into a corner, pulling my knees to my chest, sobbing. "Please no." It stopped in front of me, looking down with its hollow eyes. It didn't speak, but a thought, cold and sharp as a shard of ice, pierced my mind. My turn. Its hand shot out, and its glassy fingers closed around my wrist. The cold was an agony I cannot describe. It wasn't the cold of ice, but the absolute cold of void, of non-existence. It burned and froze simultaneously, shooting up my arm and spreading through my entire body. I was dragged, screaming and kicking across the floor. My fingers clawed at the rug, leaving grooves in the pile. I felt a profound physical wrongness as I was pulled towards the rippling silver surface of the mirror. The moment my skin touched it, it was like being submerged in liquid electricity. There was a blinding flash, a sensation of being turned inside out, and then silence. The cold was gone. The fear was gone. Now there is only a profound, static numbness. I am standing where it once stood. I can see the room, my room, but it's muted, like watching a scene through a dusty window. I see the door to the hallway open. A new woman stands there, a young, bright-eyed blogger with a suitcase, looking around with delight. She sees the vintage decor, the props I left behind. She walks towards the mirror, towards me. She waves, testing her reflection. And I, trapped here in this silent glass prison, have no choice. I feel my hand, heavy and slow, begin to rise. I watch it, a puppet on a string, as it mimics her movement a half-second too late. She smiles, unaware, and slowly, terribly, I feel my lips begin to stretch into its smile. The permanent guest. My name is Mark, and my entire life is built on a foundation of logic. I'm an efficiency expert. Companies hire me to walk into their chaotic offices, their cluttered workflows, and I find the waste. I cut the fat, streamline. There's no problem, I always say, that cannot be solved with a clear head and a solid spreadsheet. It was this unshakable rationality that led me to book room 309 at the historic and somewhat dilapidated Blackwood Hotel. The price was right, and the location was perfect for my client meeting the next morning. The one-star online reviews were just background noise. Lingering smell, one complained. Felt like I was never alone, said another. I scoffed. Ghost stories for the weak-minded. A bad smell is a ventilation issue, not a spectral one. The lobby did give me a moment's pause. It was a tomb, frozen in about 1947. A dusty chandelier hung from the high ceiling, and the air was thick with the scent of lemon polish fighting a losing battle against mildew. The clerk was an old man who moved with a slow, deliberate weariness. He handed me the key, an actual heavy brass key, and said, "Third floor. End of the hall." His eyes lingered on me a moment too long. "The air conditioner in 309. It's a bit temperamental." I found the room. The door groaned open on protesting hinges, revealing a space that was, to my professional eye, immaculate. The bed was made with military precision, the desk was clear, the carpet showed fresh vacuum lines. But the moment I stepped over the threshold, the cold hit me. It was a deep, penetrating chill that seeped through my suit jacket and settled into my bones. The wall unit air conditioner was silent and off, yet the room was a refrigerator. And then the smell hit me. It was a cloying, complex odor, the rich, sweet aroma of fine cigar tobacco, layered over something else, something faintly rotten, like meat that had been left in a sealed container for too long. I marched over to the AC unit, intent on fixing the problem. I turned the dial from off to high. Nothing. No hum, no blast of air. It was dead. The smell, however, seemed to grow stronger, as if my presence had agitated it. I'm a practical man. I opened the window, but it only budged a few inches, painted shut by decades of neglect. I decided to work through it. I laid out my files on the desk, the crisp white papers a bastion of order against the room's creeping decay. I ordered room service, ate a bland chicken dinner, and tried to ignore the constant phantom sensation of a cold draft on the back of my neck. The smell of cigars would wax and wane, sometimes so faint I thought I'd imagined it. Other times so strong I'd find myself sniffing the air like a bloodhound, trying to locate the source. It was maddening. I went to bed early, desperate for the escape of sleep. The sheets were icy, and the pillow smelled faintly of that same damned cigar smoke. I must have drifted off because the next thing I knew, I was jolted awake, my heart hammering against my ribs. I was choking. The smell was no longer a suggestion. It was a physical presence, a thick, greasy fog of cigar smoke and decay that filled my lungs, suffocating me. I gasped, sitting bolt upright in the pitch-black room, my eyes streaming. I fumbled for the bedside lamp, my fingers clumsy with panic. The yellow lamplight flooded the room, and my blood turned to ice. In the high-backed armchair by the window, a man was sitting. He was translucent, like smoke given shape. He wore a sharp 1940s-style suit, complete with a fedora tilted low on his brow. One ghostly hand held a glowing cigar, the source of the phantom smoke that was strangling me. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring blankly at the opposite wall, his form shimmering slightly, as if I were watching him through a heat haze. Logic shattered. My spreadsheet mind blue-screened. This wasn't a ventilation issue. This was impossible. No, I whispered, the sound a dry rasp in my throat. The figure didn't move. I scrambled out of bed, my legs tangling in the sheets. I had to get out. I had to get to the door. I stumbled across the room, my eyes locked on the apparition. It still hadn't moved. My hand closed around the cold brass doorknob. I turned it. It clicked, but the door didn't budge. I pulled, putting my whole weight into it. Nothing. It was as solid as if it had been welded into the frame. "Let me out," I screamed, pounding on the solid wood. A soft, rustling sound came from behind me. I froze, my fist still raised. Slowly, against my will, I turned. The man in the chair was now looking at me. His face was a pale, featureless oval, but where his eyes should have been were two hollow black pits that seemed to swallow the light from the lamp. The temperature in the room plummeted so drastically that my breath plumed in thick, white clouds. The frost formed on the windows, crawling across the glass with a faint, crackling sound. He took a long, slow drag from his cigar, the ember glowing a malevolent red. The smell of decay became overpowering. Then he spoke. His voice was the sound of dry leaves skittering across pavement, a whisper that seemed to originate inside my own skull. "You're in my seat." The finality in that whisper was more terrifying than any scream. This wasn't a hostile takeover. It was a statement of fact. I wasn't being attacked. I was being corrected. In that single, soul-crushing moment, the last vestiges of my logic evaporated, replaced by a horrifying understanding. I hadn't rented this room. I hadn't booked a temporary stay. I had answered a casting call. I was auditioning. The client meeting tomorrow, my life, my spreadsheets, none of it mattered. It was all gone. The cold wasn't just in the air anymore. It was inside me, filling the empty spaces, where my hope and reason used to be. The figure slowly raised his ghostly hand and pointed a translucent finger at the empty space on the floor beside his chair. My body moved without my consent. My feet, numb with a cold that was now eternal, shuffled across the carpet. I stopped where he pointed. I could feel the profound ancient chill radiating from him. This was my place now, the permanent chill, the endless watch. I can still see the door. Sometimes it opens. A new face, flushed with life and rationality, steps in. They look around. They complain about the cold. They scoff at the smell. And I sit here, in the chair that is no longer mine, watching them, waiting for them to understand. And in the deep, frozen silence of this room, I whisper the words that are now my only purpose, the words that bind me here for eternity. I whisper, "You're in my seat." The room that feeds. My name is Chloe, and I thought I was booking a surprise. A romantic Halloween getaway for me and my husband, Ben. We'd been passing each other in the hallway for months, two ships in the fog of work deadlines and mortgage payments. I found the advertisement online. The Heartwood Hotel, fall in love all over again. The photos showed a cozy rustic lodge, all fireplaces and autumn leaves. The honeymoon suite, room 101, was promised to be their most intimate offering. I booked it instantly, a giddy thrill bubbling in my chest. I should have listened to Ben. He's an architect. He notices things. The Heartwood lobby was charming, if a little close. The air was thick and humid, smelling of damp earth and something vaguely sweet, like overripe fruit. The clerk was a portly man with a moist handshake and eyes that didn't quite meet ours. "Ah, the newlyweds," he'd said with a wet smile, though I'd never mentioned it. "Room 101 is always ready for a fresh start." The hallway to E. Our room was unusually warm, the carpet plush and yielding under our feet. Ben jangled the key, a heavy, old-fashioned thing, and pushed the door open. "Whoa," he said, his voice flat with disbelief. Room 101 was pink, not a soft romantic rose, but a vivid fleshy pink, the color of a tongue, of raw salmon. It was everywhere. On the walls, the ceiling, even the floor was a slightly darker, mottled shade of the same hue. The only furniture was a large, round bed in the center, draped in red satin sheets. "Intimate, huh?" Ben said, dropping his bag. He ran a hand over the nearest wall, then jerked it back. "Weird, it's warm," I laughed, trying to force the mood. "Probably just great insulation. It's cozy." I placed my palm against the wall. He was right. It was unnervingly warm, like skin. Not the dry heat of a radiator, but a living, pulsing warmth. I pulled my hand away, feeling a sudden, irrational revulsion. "It's probably some new eco-friendly material," Ben muttered, but he was frowning, his architect's mind already picking at the problem. There were no seams, no corners where the wall met the ceiling. It was all one smooth, continuous surface, as if the room had been grown, not built. We tried to make the best of it. We ordered champagne, but it arrived lukewarm, the bubbles flat. The room seemed to swallow sound, our conversation falling dead the moment it left our lips. As the afternoon light faded, the room grew darker, the fleshy walls seeming to absorb the twilight. That's when I first felt it, a slow, rhythmic throb beneath my feet. "Do you feel that?" I whispered. Ben stood still, his face pale. "The floor, it's vibrating." It wasn't a vibration, it was a pulse, a slow, steady lub-dub, lub-dub, that grew stronger as true night fell. The warm walls were now hot to the touch. In the dim light, thin, dark lines began to emerge from beneath the pink surface, spreading across the walls and ceiling like a network of creeping veins. "Okay, that's it," Ben said, his voice tight with a fear I'd never heard before. "We're leaving." He grabbed our bags and strode to the door. He turned the handle. It didn't move. He twisted it harder, his knuckles white. Nothing. He threw his shoulder against the solid wood. It didn't even shudder. "It's locked! It's fucking locked!" he yelled, panic cracking his voice. I joined him, pulling at the handle, but it was useless. That's when I noticed the edges of the door. A thin, glistening, pinkish membrane was seeping from the wall, fusing the door to its frame. It looked like raw sinew. It was growing, slowly but visibly, knitting the door shut. "Ben," I breathed, pointing a trembling finger. He saw it and recoiled. "What the hell is this?" The pulsing quickened. Lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. The vein-like patterns on the walls thickened, pulsing with a dark, viscous fluid. Then, the walls began to weep. A clear, sticky slime oozed from the pores in the pink surface, dripping down with a soft, sizzling sound. I watched, horrified, as a drop landed on Ben's discarded leather bag. It smoked, eating through the material in seconds. Acid, digestive slime. A low, guttural groan echoed through the room, a sound of deep, primal hunger that came from the very walls around us. The floor beneath us shuddered. "The center," Ben shouted, grabbing my arm. "Get to the center of the room." We scrambled onto the bed, the only island in this shrinking sea of horror. The walls were no longer stationary. With a sound of tearing muscle and grinding bone, they began to move. They were contracting, closing in on us with a slow, inexorable certainty. The ceiling bowed downward. The room, which had felt so large, was suddenly the size of a large closet. The heat was stifling. the smell of rot and acid overwhelming. The red satin sheets beneath us dissolved as the acidic slime dripped from the ceiling. We huddled together back to back, our hearts hammering in terrified sync with the room's monstrous heartbeat. There was no screaming left in us. There was only the terrible, intimate understanding of what was happening. We weren't guests. We were a meal. The fleshy walls touched us. They were hot and wet, and they clung to our skin like hungry mouths. I felt a terrible pressure, and then an agonizing, dissolving sensation as the slime began to break me down. Ben's hand tightened in mine once, a final, desperate squeeze, before his grip went limp. The last thing I saw was the pink living tissue closing over my face. The last thing I heard wasn't my own scream, but a deep, resonant, satisfied sigh that vibrated through every atom of my being. It was the sound of satiety, the sound of the room full and content. And now I'm part of the sigh. I'm in the warmth of the walls, in the pulse of the veins. I'm part of the hunger. I wait in the deep, warm dark, feeling the emptiness of the room, the yearning in its core. I feel a new key turn in a new lock. I hear the door open. I hear a young, hopeful voice say, "Oh, how unique." And the room, we, begin to get ready. The pulse quickens, the warmth returns. We are so hungry. Checkout is at dawn. My name is Alex, and I haven't slept in 72 hours. Not properly. The kind of sleep I'm talking about is the deep, drowning kind, where the world melts away and you're just gone. For me, sleep is a taunting whisper, a door that's always locked from the inside. My own apartment had become a prison of wakefulness. Every creak of the floorboards, every hum of the refrigerator, a fresh spike of anxiety. So, in a moment of desperate, sleep-deprived logic, I decided a change of scenery was the answer. I booked a room at the Midnight Salve, a hotel whose online presence was mysteriously sparse, known only to those who needed it. The place was a monolithic slab of concrete and dark glass, a brutalist nightmare that seemed to absorb the city's light rather than reflect it. The lobby was a vast, silent expanse of black marble. There was no clerk, just a single key waiting in a small cubby labeled with my name. Room 666. I almost laughed. A joke for the damned. The room was the opposite of the lobby, small, Spartan, and eerily silent. The walls were thick, soundproofed to perfection. The air was still and cool. For the first time in weeks, the relentless noise in my head began to quiet. This might work. On the nightstand, next to a cheap lamp, was a single object. A thick leather-bound ledger, its cover worn smooth with age. I lay on the firm bed, my body aching with exhaustion, and picked it up. The pages were filled with names and dates, all in the same elegant, cursive hand. It was a record of previous guests. Jonathan Phelps. Checkout, 1:11 a.m., Eleanor Vance. Checkout, 2:02 a.m., Sarah Jenkins. Checkout, 2:59 a.m., dozens of them. A strange system, I thought, my mind foggy. Who checks out in the middle of the night? But the relief of the silence was a powerful drug. I didn't question it. I felt my eyelids, heavy as manhole covers, finally begin to droop. The ledger slipped from my fingers onto the floor as I fell into the black, welcoming void. I was jolted awake by a sound so violent it felt like a physical blow. Knock. A single, percussive strike against my door, hard enough to make the wood vibrate in its frame. My heart tried to claw its way out of my chest. Adrenaline, that old enemy of sleep, flooded my system. I was fully, terrifyingly alert. I stumbled out of bed, my legs weak, and yanked the door open. The hallway was empty. A long, dark corridor of identical doors, all shut. Silence. "Hello?" I croaked. My voice was swallowed by the thick carpet and soundproofed walls. Nothing. Maybe I'd dreamed it. A hypnagogic jerk, a final scream from my frantic nervous system. I closed the door, my hands trembling, and leaned against it, trying to slow my breathing. That's when I saw it. The ledger was back on the nightstand. I was sure I'd dropped it on the floor. A cold dread, sharper than any insomnia-induced fear, began to prickle at the base of my skull. I walked over, my feet leaden. The book was open to a new page. The last entry, written in that same flawless cursive, was fresh. The ink looked wet. Alex Corbin, checkout, 3:34 a.m. I stared at my own name. The room seemed to tilt. This wasn't a guest ledger. It was a ledger of departures, of finalities. I looked at the digital clock on the nightstand. 3:33 a.m. The number glowed a hateful red. 1 minute. I had 1 minute. Panic seized me, cold and absolute. I ran to the door, pulling at the handle. It was locked, solid. I threw my shoulder against it again and again, but it was like trying to knock down a mountain. I scrambled for my phone. No signal. The landline on the desk was dead, the cord severed cleanly. 3. The clock ticked over. 34. The moment the numbers changed, the world ended. The cheap lamp on the nightstand died, not with a flicker, but with a final, silent pop. The faint ambient light from the window vanished, plunging the room into an absolute suffocating blackness. It was a blackness you could feel, a physical substance that pressed against your eyes, filled your ears, your mouth. The silence was no longer peaceful. It was a vacuum, a void from which all sound had been surgically removed. The air grew thick and heavy, like wading through cold oil. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Then, a new sound began. A soft, dry, rustling scrape. It came from the closet. My eyes, straining against the impossible dark, began to pick out, a deeper shadow detaching itself from the closet's interior. It unfolded itself. A nightmare of impossible geometry. It was tall, impossibly so, its head brushing the ceiling. Its limbs were long, thin, and there were too many of them, jointed in all the wrong places, moving with a slow, deliberate grace that was more terrifying than any lurch. It didn't walk. It unfolded, segment by segment, flowing into the center of the room. It had no face, no features, just a sense of profound focused attention. It was a silhouette of pure void, a hole in the fabric of reality shaped like a man. It stopped, standing between me and the door I could no longer see. One of its long, slender arms, ending in something that was not quite a hand, slowly rose and pointed at me. The purpose was clear. It wasn't a threat, it was a statement. My time was up. The ledger had been signed. Checkout was here. I opened my mouth to scream, but the heavy, dead air stole the sound. I was a tenant whose lease had expired. And this was the landlord. The last thing I saw was the darkness, not around it, but of it, flowing towards me. Not to touch me, to collect me. The lullaby of room 214. My name is Sarah, and the sound I knew best in the world was my son's crying. For 3 straight months, since the moment we brought Leo home from the hospital, it was the soundtrack to my life. A piercing, frantic wail that spoke of a deep, inconsolable distress that nothing, not feeding, not changing, not rocking, not driving for miles in the dead of night, could ease. The doctors called it colic. I called it a slow, grinding erosion of my soul. I was a ghost of myself, hollowed out by exhaustion and a crushing sense of failure. So when the pipe burst in our apartment, flooding the nursery, it felt like the universe's final cruel joke. We had to find a hotel. The only place with a last-minute vacancy was the Sylvan Arms, an old grand dame of a building that had seen better decades. The lobby was a museum of faded glamour, all dusty velvet and tarnished brass. The clerk, an elderly woman with kind, tired eyes, took one look at Leo's red, screaming face and my tear-streaked one, and her expression softened. "Let's get you into a quiet room, dear," she said. "Room 214, it's peaceful." I carried my screaming son down the long, quiet hallway, his cries echoing off the flocked wallpaper. I fumbled with the key, my hands shaking with fatigue, and finally shoved the heavy door open. I stepped into room 214, bracing for another long night. And then, the impossible happened. Leo stopped, his cries cut off mid-wail as if a switch had been flipped. His little body, which had been rigid with fury, went limp in my arms. His wide, tear-filled eyes, still glistening, were no longer screwed shut in anger. They were fixed, mesmerized, on the far upper corner of the ceiling. He was staring at nothing, at the simple junction where the wall met the plaster, but he was utterly captivated. A soft, gurgling coo escaped his lips, a sound I hadn't heard in weeks. A profound, dizzying relief washed over me. "See, sweetie?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "It's okay. Everything's okay." The room itself was unremarkable, if a little old-fashioned. A double bed, a dresser, a crib tucked against the wall. But the silence was a physical blessing. It was the first true quiet I had experienced in months. I put Leo down in the crib, half expecting the spell to break. He didn't make a sound. He just lay there, his gaze still latched onto that empty corner, his little chest rising and falling in a calm, steady rhythm I'd almost forgotten he was capable of. As true darkness fell, I put on my pajamas, the simple act feeling like a luxury. I was just about to turn out the light when I heard it. It was faint at first, a whisper of sound that seemed to come from the very walls. It was a woman's voice singing a lullaby. It was the most beautiful, sorrowful melody I had ever heard. The tune was unfamiliar, something old and folk-like, but the voice was pure, clear, and filled with a bottomless, aching love. It wove through the room, a silken thread of sound that seemed to vibrate in the air. I should have been terrified. I should have called the front desk. But all I could think was, Leo is quiet. He was already asleep, his breathing deep and even. The lullaby was not for me. It was for him. And in my shattered state, I accepted this impossible gift without question. The song was a balm, soothing my own frayed nerves. It felt like a kindness, like a mother's hand reaching across time to help another. I lay down on the bed, listening to the beautiful, haunting melody, and for the first time in 3 months, I fell into a deep, dreamless, and immediate sleep. I don't know what woke me. A change in the air, perhaps. The silence. The lullaby had stopped. The room was pitch black. My first instinctual check was for Leo. I turned over, peering through the gloom towards the crib. It was empty. My heart stopped. "Leo?" I scrambled out of bed, fumbling for the lamp. Harsh yellow light flooded the room. The crib was pristine, the little blanket tucked neatly aside. He was gone. "Leo?" I screamed, my voice shrill with panic. I dropped to my knees, looking under the bed. Nothing. I tore open the closet. Empty. My breath came in ragged, hysterical sobs. He couldn't have gotten out. He was just a baby. And then the lullaby began again. This time, it wasn't coming from the walls. It was close. Intimately close. It was being sung softly, tenderly, directly into my right ear. I could feel the faint, phantom breath of the singer on my skin. The same beautiful voice, the same aching melody, but now it was a violation, a predator's whisper in the dark. I spun around, swatting at the empty air, a scream trapped in my throat. The singing continued, unperturbed, a serenade from a ghost. My frantic eyes scanned the room, and that's when I saw it. Near the baseboard, right below the corner Leo had been staring at, was a faint line in the wallpaper. A panel, almost perfectly concealed. I crawled over, my fingers clawing at the edge. It gave way with a groan of protest, swinging inward to reveal a dark, cramped space, no larger than a linen closet. The smell that wafted out was of dust, dry rot, and something faintly, terribly sweet. I reached for my phone, shining its light into the void. Inside, propped against the back wall, was a skeleton. It was dressed in the tattered remains of what might have been a maid's uniform or an old-fashioned house dress. The bones were small and delicate. The skull was tilted downward, as if in prayer, and cradled in its bony arms, swaddled neatly in a bundle of faded, rotting cloth, was a small, familiar shape. It was Leo's blue blanket, the one he'd been wrapped in when I put him down. The lullaby stopped. The absolute silence that followed was more deafening than any scream. And then, a voice, a dry, whispering rustle that seemed to come from the bones themselves, filled the small space in my mind. My baby now. I don't know how long I sat there. The police found me in the morning, catatonic, still staring into that dark hole. They found no skeleton, no hidden panel, just me and an empty room. They called it a tragedy, a mother's breakdown. They think I hurt my own son. They don't hear what I hear. In the quiet moments, in the dead of night, I can still hear it, faint but clear. A beautiful, sorrowful lullaby sung just for him. And sometimes, if I listen very closely, I can hear the soft, contented coo of a baby who never cries anymore. The endless corridor. My name is Chloe, and I hunt ghosts for a living. Or rather, I hunt the stories of ghosts and I prove them wrong. My YouTube channel, Skeptical Seekers, is built on a foundation of logic, debunking, and a healthy dose of sarcasm. So when I heard the legend of Room 13 at the old grandiose hotel, the shifting room that supposedly trapped people in an endless loop, I knew it was my next target. It was the perfect Halloween special. I pictured the finale, me grinning at the camera, holding up my room key, saying, "See? Just a room. A little creepy maybe, but just a room." I was so clever. The grandiose was a crumbling monument to bad 1970s architecture, a maze of mustard yellow brick and smoked glass windows. The air in the lobby smelled of stale cigarette smoke and defeat. I checked in under a fake name, winking at my camera as the board clerk slid the key for Room 13 across the counter. "They say you shouldn't stay there on Halloween," he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. I just laughed and gave my camera a thumbs up. Perfect atmosphere. The hallway on the first floor was a masterpiece of ugly. A garish, swirling pattern of oranges and browns stretched away under the sickly glow of flickering fluorescent lights. The air was thick and still. I found door 13, its number slightly crooked. "All right, folks," I whispered to my camera, the red recording light a comforting beacon of reality. "This is it. The infamous Room 13. Let's see what all the fuss is about." I pushed the door open. The room was a hotel room. Beige walls, a queen-size bed with a faded floral spread, a cheap wooden desk. A total anticlimax. I panned my camera around, narrating my disappointment. As you can see, no portals to other dimensions, no spectral hands reaching from the closet. Just beige, I chuckled, feeling a pang of professional disappointment. The bit would be a bust. Well, let's go set up the static cams. The real investigation starts at midnight. I turned around, reached for the doorknob, and pulled it open. My confident narration died in my throat. I was not looking out into the ugly hallway. I was looking into Room 13. It was identical. The same beige walls. The same faded floral spread on the queen-sized bed. The same cheap wooden desk. My own footprints were still faintly visible in the thin carpet dust from where I'd just walked. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. "What the?" I muttered, stepping fully into the room. No, it was the room. It had to be. I must have gotten turned around. I spun back to the door I'd just come through. It was now just another section of beige wall, seamless and unbroken. The only door was the one in front of me, the one that now led back into the same garish orange and brown hallway I'd just left. "Okay, a prank," I said, my voice less steady now. "A clever mirror trick." I held up my camera, its viewfinder showing the same impossible loop. I stepped back into the hallway, my heart beginning to hammer against my ribs. I looked left. The corridor stretched into infinity, a repeating nightmare of flickering lights and identical doors, all numbered 13. I looked right. The same. There were no elevators, no stairwells, no fire exits. Just an endless, silent, geometric hell. Then my camera beeped. A low battery warning flashed once, twice, and the screen went black. The little red light died. Total silence descended, broken only by the frantic thumping of my own heart. The air grew colder, sucking the warmth from my skin. Panic set in. I ran. I sprinted down the hallway, my sneakers slapping against the ugly carpet. Door 13, door 13, door 13, they blurred past. I didn't know what I was running towards, only that I had to run. I skidded to a halt, grabbed a doorknob at random, and threw the door open. Room 13. The bed was slightly messier, the imprint of a body still on the floral spread. My imprint. I slammed the door shut and ran in the opposite direction, my breath now coming in ragged, tearful gasps. I tried another door, Room 13. This time, the faucet in the tiny bathroom was on, dripping steadily, monotonously into the stained sink. A shadow darted from the closet to behind the door, moving just at the edge of my vision. I screamed and scrambled back into the hall. I lost track of time. There was no day or night, only the endless fluorescent lit now. I tried breaking a window in one of the rooms, but the glass was like diamond, and beyond it was not the city, but a solid, featureless gray wall. I screamed until my throat was raw, but my voice just echoed down the infinite corridor, a pathetic, diminishing sound. I'm still here. I've stopped running. I sit with my back against a door numbered 13. in a hallway that has no beginning and no end. Sometimes I open a door just to see what's different. Sometimes the chair is overturned. Sometimes the television is on, showing static. Once I saw myself sitting on the bed and weeping just before I slammed the door. My phone is dead. My camera is dead. My hope is dead. I am a prisoner of geometry, a specimen in an impossible maze. This is my Halloween special. No ghosts, no demons, just beige walls, ugly carpet, and a silence so complete it feels like a physical weight. I can hear my own heartbeat, a slow, ticking clock counting down an eternal sentence, and sometimes from very, very far away, I think I can hear another door open and the faint, terrified footsteps of another skeptic just beginning their journey. The welcome gift. My name is Ben, and I've built a career on being hard to impress. As a travel writer for Venture magazine, my job is to dissect luxury, to find the flaw in the five-star facade. I'm the guy who notes the dust on the ceiling fan, the slight chill in the spa pool, the arrogance in the concierge's smile. So when my editor assigned me the Elysian, a boutique hotel whispered about in certain circles for its life-changing ambiance, I packed my sharpest pens and my most cynical disposition. I was ready to be underwhelmed. The Elysian was pleasant. A beautifully restored old building, sure, but nothing to justify the hushed, reverent tones people used when they spoke of it. The staff was efficient, their smiles a little too serene. The lobby was tasteful, the air smelling faintly of lavender and beeswax. It was all perfectly calibrated and perfectly boring. My room, 443, was the same story. A well-appointed box with a nice view, tasteful art, and a comfortable-looking king bed. Standard, forgettable. I was already drafting the opening lines of my scathing review in my head. Then I saw the bottle. It sat on the low dresser, apart from the minibar's offerings. It was a deep emerald green glass, unlabeled, sealed with dark red wax. Next to it was a small cream-colored card with a single line of elegant script, a taste of eternity. I smirked. A bit pretentious even for a place like this. A cheap marketing gimmick. Probably some overpriced local vintage they were hoping to sell. But it was complimentary, and my editor's expense account was generous. That night, after a bland room service meal, I uncorked it. The wine that poured out was the color of a blood ruby. And its aroma was incredible, a complex bouquet of dark berries, rich earth and something else, something I couldn't place. Like the scent of ozone after a summer storm or old, polished wood in a sunlit library. I took a sip. The world did not just change. It bloomed. The beige walls of room 443 seemed to breathe, their color deepening into a warm golden honey. The mediocre landscape painting above the bed suddenly held impossible depth, the brush strokes alive with movement. The air itself thickened, becoming sweet and charged, like the air in a sacred place. A wave of pure, unadulterated bliss washed over me, a feeling of profound, cosmic belonging. This wasn't happiness. It was homecoming. Every knot of stress in my shoulders unraveled. Every cynical thought in my head was silenced. I felt peace, true, absolute peace. I finished the glass, then the bottle, sitting in the armchair as the room sang a silent, beautiful hymn just for me. I had found paradise, and it was a hotel room in Nowheresville. I must have fallen asleep in that chair, because I woke with a jolt to the harsh light of morning. The bliss was gone. It wasn't a gradual fading. It was an amputation. The room was just a room again, beige, sterile, and unbearably dull. The painting was flat and cheap. The air was dead, but worse than the visual shift was the feeling inside me. A crushing, hollow emptiness yawned open in my chest, a vacuum where that perfect peace had been. My skin felt tight and filthy. My head throbbed with a headache that felt more spiritual than physical, and my entire being, every cell, was screaming for one thing, the wine. I stumbled to the dresser, but the bottle was empty. The craving was a physical pain, a rat gnawing at my insides. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe. I needed it. I lurched out of my room and down to the front desk, my hands shaking. The clerk, the same serene woman who had checked me in, looked up. Her smile didn't waver. I need another bottle of the wine. From my room, I stammered, my voice raw. Of course, sir, she said, her voice as smooth as honey. There was no question, no request for payment. She simply bent down and produced an identical emerald bottle from beneath the counter. She placed it in my trembling hands. A taste of eternity. I didn't even make it back to the room. I retreated to a shadowed alcove off the lobby, broke the wax seal with my teeth, and drank deeply from the bottle. The world snapped back into glorious, vibrant focus. The emptiness filled. The peace returned, deeper and more enveloping than before. I wept with relief. That was 3 years ago. I never wrote the review. I never checked out. My editor stopped calling. My family, I assume, thinks I'm dead. They're not entirely wrong. I live in room 443. My body is a withered shell. I see that in the mirror during the fleeting, terrifying moments between bottles. My clothes hang off me. My hands tremble constantly. The staff, always smiling, provides the bottles. They appear like clockwork, delivered silently to my door. I no longer eat the food they bring. The wine is all I need. It is my food, my water, my air, my God. Each bottle grants me a few hours of that artificial paradise, a perfect, glowing lie that my soul now accepts as the only truth. But the crashes between are a special kind of hell, each one deeper and darker than the last. The room in those moments is a tomb. The silence is a judgment. I am a prisoner of the most beautiful cage ever built. I sold my life, my career, my very self for a complimentary bottle of wine, and the hotel, with its endlessly smiling staff, is more than happy to keep extending my stay forever. Sometimes, in the deep, silent heart of the night, when the bliss is at its peak, I think I can hear the hotel itself sigh in contentment. It is not a cruel sound. It is the sound of a well-fed thing. And I am just another satisfied customer, drinking my way through eternity, one cursed bottle at a time.